Email logic. Today's lecture will give you an overview of how to write a successful legal email. We'll cover the basic elements of a legal email written to a supervising attorney in your own office. We'll also go over some tricky questions about word choice to help you be more comfortable with native expressions in English. Also, the sample email language that we'll cover today should also help you with your first email writing assignment. So as we all know, email is everywhere. This is from a law review article written by one of UVA Law's own legal writing professors, Joe Four. He writes, "Email memos have become the predominant means of communicating analysis between lawyers. So writing good emails is as important, maybe even more important, than writing occasionally long formal memos. Emails are also how people get their first impression of you as a writer." So how should an email look? We'll do that by taking a look at two emails that I received recently in my personal life to get a big picture view of visual logic in emails. I'm going to show you how they look on my small iPhone 8. All right, real email number one. What do we have here? We've got several short paragraphs, white space, that's all good. It's pretty easy to read. Notice that a lot of these paragraphs are only 2 sentences long. I like that in this paragraph, for instance, he starts with the hook or the main point. We are always looking for actors, and that's the whole point of his email. I also like that in this next paragraph, he lays out a little roadmap to tell us what to expect. There are 2 ways, and then he follows it up with more transition words. One, the other. By the way, as you can see here, it's perfectly okay to write very short paragraphs in an email. Some of these are just 1 sentence long. All right, so here's real email number 2. First off, that's a lot of text, and there are no spaces between paragraphs, so it's very hard to read, especially on an email screen like this on a phone. Now, you might not have seen this because it's very buried. This is an important part of the email, actually, where the writer is trying to explain something about the composition of the board, but it's buried deep in the paragraph. So what can we take away from these 2 actual emails? The importance of white space, short paragraphs, not long ones, and then making your main points clear, putting them at the top of your paragraph if you can. All right, so what are some other elements of visual logic? Bullets play a really big role in that. Anytime we have a lot of text in an email, which is often the case when we're writing about our research to other attorneys. So here's one way of doing a bullet. Say that you're being asked to talk about local rules of a court. What I've done here, I've bolded the header, so it's very easy to see what this bullet is about in the list of bullets. I've also made this bullet only 1 sentence long, and that's a good rule of thumb. 1 to 2 sentences is perfect for a bullet. Here's another example. Say that you're writing about case summaries, as we're about to do for the email assignment that you have. This, by the way, is a fake case, so you can't look it up. It's going to happen in the future. Now, like the other one, it's short, but I've got 2 sentences here. And as you might see, I'm starting to express an opinion or a prediction. I'm saying this case is strong for us. I'm bringing out facts about how something is similar to our own case, and that's a great practice to have. Finally, here's a third example if you're just doing a corporate research email and you're not citing to a particular area of law, but you're trying to talk about follow-up items. For this kind of bullet, you don't need, of course, any citation. All right, say that you have an even longer email and you want to make use of headers. So these are 3 types of headers that you might use. You might also have something called case summary or case discussion. Those would all be fine. Now, if you wanted to be very organized, particularly in a longer, more complicated email, you might use Roman numerals or section letters. All right, so now that we've got a grasp of the visual logic, Let's look at the content itself. How do you start the email? First of all, what's the subject header? There were some great ideas in the articles that you're reading this week about how to do that. Here's my take on that same topic we're going to be writing about. And notice what I did here. I just put the client's name. Putting that in makes it easier for all the attorneys involved to file the email away in the right place. All right, now here's where the choices start coming. How do you address people in your greeting? If this is not a stranger, but somebody that you work with, even if they're in a position of authority over you, you can write, "Dear Amanda." That's not wrong. However, it sounds a little bit formal. You don't always use dear. Dear is better for writing a formal letter to a stranger. Also, the colon makes it feel a little bit more formal than what you need. How about this? "Hi, Amanda." Well, if it's a coworker, someone around your own age, or you really know the partner or supervisor well and they use "Hi, Annie" to you, that might be okay. But for the most part, that's likely to be a little bit too informal. So I like this one best. It's just the first name. It's simple. You'll never go wrong by doing that. Okay, so we've got our elements down for the beginning now. How do you jump into the body of the email? Here's a classic way to do that may look familiar from looking at memos. You asked me to review, analyze, research. And here's the longer version. Now, the beauty of something like this is now your attorney knows exactly what you've been asked to do. The only mild downside is that it still sounds a little bit formal. So if it is someone that you know well, maybe you would soften it by simply jumping instead to this. "I've had a chance to review. I've had a chance to research the standards governing non-competition agreements under Virginia law." That just tells them that you're on it and that you realize that they gave you something to do already. All right, so we have those elements down. Now, in an email, you're not going to have a section like in a formal memo that says "short answer." But you do want to do something similar. You don't want to have your reader trying to guess what your ultimate answer is going to be. The only difference is that you don't need to be long about it. You don't have to have a long and elegantly worded version of a short answer. Something like this would work. This, by the way, is a fictional statute that I made up for the purpose of our video here. And here's a second example under the same statute. This is longer, obviously. I'm laying out the rule. So if your supervisor has asked you for an overview of the legal standard or the rule, this is a great way to do it. This is also what we'll be doing in our upcoming email assignment. Now, the one thing about this is you can see it's fairly dense looking. You might want to break it up into 3 sections, 1, 2, 3, to show the different parts of the test. But it depends on the overall length of the email. All right, so let's pull this all together. We've got the greeting, we've got the first lines, we've got the short answer. Okay, by the way, here's a version of that opening line that I mentioned earlier. "I've had a chance to research the range of electronic communications," etc. Then here is that short answer that we saw just a minute ago. And then I needed a transition sentence. So that's what I put in there next. All right? That tells you that you're going to get to the meat of the email right now. And here is a bulleted version. I might have 4 or 5 of these to explain what I found in the relevant cases. Now, this is a short summary. You notice it's just 1 sentence long. It's 1 sentence. But what I tried to do was mention the facts that are relevant. And I tried to highlight where the quotes were coming from, the frequent and significant in length. And quotes, by the way, are really useful. So even in a short summary like this, if you can find a short on-target quote from your case, that's always going to count for a lot. All right, so what's next? Whenever you're working on an email, you're probably going to be in Gmail or maybe Microsoft Outlook, which come with excellent spell checks and grammar check systems. So I like to always make sure that spell check is turned on for myself. In Gmail, if you see that little series of dots, that's how you can turn it on. If there is nothing else that you take away from today's lesson, I would say this: spell check, always, no exceptions. And the other thing I would say, spell check has its limitations. Unfortunately, there are many words in English that sound alike, but they're spelled differently, and spell check doesn't always catch that. So on the topic of checks, let's talk about Grammarly. Grammarly is great. I know that many of you probably use Grammarly or something like it. But, word of caution. Here's something from their website. It's true that a very big effect is not great wording. They suggest tremendous. There's nothing really wrong with tremendous, but is that what you want to be saying if you're writing an email to a legal recruiter at a firm or to your partner? And here's what I would say. U.S. legal culture is not that enthusiastic. You don't want to come across as being so strangely eager or zealous or happy. You want to be kind of in the middle. By the same token, don't worry about being too apologetic. You might come from a culture where it's expected that you will be very deferential or even apologize for a small inconvenience. The good news is that in U.S. legal culture, unless you've made a true mistake or you're asking for a big favor, you can be less apologetic. A simple, "I'm sorry for this inconvenience," will often do the trick. All right, so let's get back to our email because we are almost done. How do we wrap it up? You don't need a section called conclusion in an email unless it's a very formal and elaborate one. So what do? You want a 1 to 2 sentence wrap up of your answer. That's a lot like your opening short answer. And then just a 1 or 2 sentence closing that brings up the next steps that you want to offer or recommend. So here those next steps are: I'd be glad to dig into the case law about fee provisions under Section 203A if you'd like, or start drafting a letter to the client. Please let me know how I can help. Here's an alternative. In this case, I'm offering to either provide you a more detailed memo or to set up a time to talk. And that can be good because many attorneys do prefer to be able to talk since it's more efficient. All right, so now let's go back to the email and say that we've drafted the whole thing. It looks great. We've got our bullets. How do we sign off? Now remember what I said about U.S. legal culture not being that enthusiastic. So how about something simple like regards, or best, or thanks? Finally, I've often signed off in my practice emails just with my name. You can't go wrong with that. All right, so let's sum up then. We've learned today about visual logic, looking at short paragraphs, 1 to 2 sentences oftentimes, bullets and headers, subject header being clear and specific, greetings not going too far into formality or informality, short answers, various types, and bullets oftentimes after those, the importance of carefully using spell check and grammar check, closing off your email with questions or suggestions about next steps, and then a short and sweet sign off. And with that, I'll sign off from this video. Thanks for watching.